Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. You're listening to Cassie here on the Vintage Thimble, and I just thought I'd share with you some cool and possibly unknown facts about Victorian New Year's traditions. Let's take a look at these traditions. So, why was there Victorian traditions around the New Year's? Well, quite simply, it's because just like we do today, no one really wants to end the Christmas fun and celebrations that we enjoy. So they would end off the season with a nice big party to celebrate the new year in. Except that their versions of how they celebrated were a little bit different and their traditions a little more unique than many of our own. So without further ado, let's take a look at this. Tradition number 1. Bells to ring in the new year. That's right, everyone. There was no fireworks. There was no tooting horns and things that you could swing in the air, and there was certainly no big ball coming down at Times Square. In fact, what they did was they rang in bells, and the bells were symbolic of ringing out the old year and ringing in the new year, welcoming all the new possibilities that could come with that new year. I think it sounds quite nice, don't you? Number 2. This part is called Hogmany. Let's try and say that again. Hogmany. This is based out of a tradition that Queen Victoria ushered in. Queen Victoria was obsessed with all things Scottish, and she loved the Scottish traditions around the new year. So what this tradition involved was the tradition of bearing gifts. A person would come and they would be the first person to cross the threshold on the new year, and they would come bearing a gift. Another name for this was also called first footing. Once again, symbolizing that person who was first person to cross the threshold. This person would come bearing gifts that symbolized the wealth and fortune that people hope for in the new year. Gifts would include a black bun cake, or shortbread, or coal, or salt, or whiskey. Another interesting part of this tradition is that the person crossing the threshold, if they had dark hair, it was considered to be more or less good luck. Whereas if someone coming across the threshold had light-colored hair, trouble might be coming to your house. Number 3. Clean your hearth. So, this tradition involved getting the house ready for the new year. Victorians observed this tradition carefully. They would clean everything up, take out all the trash, dust everything down, but a significant part was cleaning out the hearth. Cleaning out the hearth involved taking out all the old ashes and leaving it cleaned and swept and ready for use. The significance of this was that you were taking away the ills of the past year and making room for the new. I think it sounds like a very nice tradition, but I got to admit, I'm kind of glad I don't have any ashes to clean up because my house doesn't have a wood fireplace. How about you? Number 4, do not take candles or lanterns outside. In a Victorian home, the fires would never go completely out. They were almost always burning somewhere in the house. To take a candle or a lantern outside was as if to allow the light to go out, and if you let that light go out, based on Victorian superstition, you were believing that there's a possibility the fire in the home could go out, once again symbolizing misfortune to the family. So you would not take any candles or lights outside. Tradition number 5. Gift giving and sending cards. Victorians loved to give gifts and embrace the holidays, and so often at New Year's, gifts such as spices and fruit were given to other people to celebrate and welcome in the new year. In addition to this was the tradition of exchanging greeting cards. Victorians embraced this tradition and in fact loved it so much that they started giving cards on every tradition, every possible holiday that they could find. They were giving out cards again. And it's interesting now with our modern times, everything's going paperless, and now if you get a handwritten card from someone, well, that's pretty special indeed, isn't it? Number 6, throw that cake at the door. Have you ever heard of such a crazy thing, throwing a piece of food at the door? The Victorians did this thing. Once again, they believed that this would prove for a year without hunger or want. And some readings that have found said that it's best to take your aunt's fruitcake and throw it at the door. So maybe they didn't care for her baking. I don't know. What do you think? It sure sounds like a fun tradition though. Number 7, Masquerade balls. The women who would attend these balls would outdo each other with their gowns. It was an event to get dressed for sure. You would pull out your finest and make sure that it looked fantastic. And masks were often worn for these as well, hence them being called masquerade balls. Much like any event that we plan today, lots of planning and preparation was involved in throwing such a party. You would have to rent a hall, procure a band, get a caterer and cater the event, and of course send out invitations. That's right, folks, these New Year's masquerade balls were invitation only. But they were a lovely thing and everyone got to have a wonderful time. Number 8, new clothing and money. It was believed that each person should be wearing at least one article of new clothing, and everyone should have a little bit of money on them as the new year passed over and the new day began. Even small children would be given a coin to put in their pocket. Once again, this is all to prevent bad luck and ensure good wealth and fortune in the new year. Number 9, mysticism. Victorians were indeed very superstitious, and they believed that whatever they were doing on New Year's Day could be what they're doing for the rest of the year. So New Year's Day became very significant, far more significant even than what you were doing the night before. So staying at home could ensure doom, and you might be doomed to an illness and be in bed all year. You definitely didn't want that. The day off from New Year's, the following thoughts were what Victorians had. Because they followed this tradition or this superstition that whatever you were doing on New Year's Day, you might find yourself doing all year, Victorians valued trying to build a life that had as much leisure time and pleasure as possible. Hence, they rang in the new year doing exactly that. Another interesting thing with the mysticism is people did fortune telling. People would read their fortunes in each other's tea leaves at the bottom of their cups. There was also certain groups of people that would dabble in occultic practices such as seances, reading crystal balls, things like that. So there was definitely a mysticism end towards all of this as well. And then finally, number 10, open houses. The open houses would start around noon and go to about 6 p.m. every year on New Year's Day. This was a huge event for people. The ladies would get the parlor prepared with food and drink, and they would wear some of their finest and prettiest clothing to receive male guests. Any young eligible man over the age of 10 would go out and start visiting and bring calling cards and visit from one place to the next. This really was like our modern version of speed dating, really. What would happen is they'd go from house to house, and as part of the tradition, you were given a drink. So what ended up happening is this became a reason for young men to get drunk. And so here's how it would go. Upon arrival, a young man would be introduced to the eligible woman of the household under the watchful eye of the parents. Not surprisingly, this custom quickly became sport. Young men would try to rack up as many as 50 calls in a day, being more interested in becoming intoxicated than meeting the host's eligible daughters was the truth of the matter. So a young woman would angrily collect the calling cards as if they were like butterfly specimens. By the late 1800s, the hospitality of the day had been so abused that opening up one's house on New Year's Day to strangers was snuffed out by social disapproval. And ultimately, after World War I, the custom of New Year's Day calling came to an end, and New Year's Day parties as we know them today became the popular thing to do. So there you have it, everyone. Some nice surprising little traditions that the Victorians celebrated on New Year's Day. You know, 2020 has been a really hard year for all of us. It's been a challenging year, and I think we're all ready for something new. I just wanted to do this little video to wish all of you a very happy new year, a prosperous and fortunate new year. Let's hear it for 2021. Bye, guys.